this is Pretty from It's a Pretty Well. Today I'm starting this card with a Tim Holtz watercolor paper. This watercolor paper has a rough side and a smooth side. Now I'm planning to use the smooth side for today's card. And I'm also using this beautiful stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, and it's called The Magic of Christmas. I really like the illustration of all the stamps in this set. And I've already pre-selected two different pine leaves and branches for my stamp, and I'm going to do a full watercoloring for this card. So I have chosen some of my Zig clean marker pens, and the colors that I've used are very like in the shades of greens and blues, and a couple of browns for the pine cone itself. So I'm starting off by adding the darker shade of the browns into the places where I think the pine cone would look the darkest, and then I will take the lighter shade or the lighter brown, which I'll blend out the brown using this towards the outer part of the pine cone, and then I'll take a green marker. Now this is a very blue-green marker. My idea is to use, I don't know, it's called the silver fir or the blue fir. Some of them, they have this really blue tint to their fur, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm using the dark, deep green, bluish green color at the base of the pine, and then a little bit of an aqua blue to blend that darker shade, and then a lighter green to blend it out all. And then I'm taking the spritzer and I'm spritzing lots of water. Now, making sure I'm keeping my hand at a distance. I'm not keeping it really close to the stamp. I don't want the water to flow off it, but I want the water to kind of spread the color, is what I'm saying. And then I'm going to stamp it onto this watercolor paper. And then you don't want to lift it immediately either. You want to let that stamp really soak into the paper. And once you're done, then you're ready to lift it. And it looks so beautiful. That faux watercolor just adds to it, as if you've really done some watercoloring. And then I did, without inking or spritzing it water, I stamped it once again. And then I took the second pine branch and I went with a little olive green shade of greens. So I started off from the base, not from the base, from the middle of the pine with the dark color, and then I pulled the dark color with the lighter green color just to spread the color some more. And then I did the same thing, spritzed it with lots of water. I've spritzed it maybe 5 or 6 times, and then I stamped it again just around the previous pine branch that I stamped earlier. Again, I did the same thing. I did not re-ink it again, just using what was there already in it. I stamped a few more, and that was it. And then I just heat set this cardstock, and the reason I heat set it is because I'm planning to ink blend the edges a bit. The idea for me was to create a very soft, wintry looking scene, and then I just took this media silicone matte from I think this is also Tim Holtz. Yes, Tim Holtz. And I took Distress Oxide ink in Cracked Pistachio. It's a beautiful, not really a green, it's kind of a minty green, muted. It's just a beautiful green. And I took this blending brush, which is also from Simon Says Stamp, and I blended a very light hue of that Cracked pistachio ink on the edges. And then again, heat set this. Oh, sorry, no. Before I heat set it, I decided to stamp the sentiment. And the sentiment is also from the same stamp set. And what I'm stamping is Christmas. Eventually, I will be stamping Merry, Merry as well. But first, I started with the Christmas. It's a nice, beautiful calligraphied sentiment, which I stamped using Versafine Onyx black ink. I really wanted the sentiment to pop out of that surface. And then I heat set it because it was very important for what I was going to do next, that the surface was completely dry. And then I again took my spritzer, poured some water, not really, spritzed some water onto my glass media mat, and then I took a dry brush, dipped it into the water, and I splattered just plain water all over the surface. And then when I was done doing that, I took this embossing powder from Wow, and it's called Coastal Embossing Glitter. It's a beautiful embossing glitter. That means to say there's glitter mixed with a clear embossing powder, and it has a very nice blue aqua tint, which just looked beautiful with what I was doing. And then I removed as much as I can from the top of the embossing powder from the top of the wood, just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then I started to heat set this embossing powder from the back. And the reason is because if I did it from the front, the air from the heat gun would have moved the glitter away, and I didn't want the glitter to completely move away. And eventually you will see it still doesn't hold as much glitter. Much of my glitter is gone, but it still looks beautiful. And then I took a brush and brushed off any stray glitter that was hanging around. And then I took the stencil, which is from Simon Says Stamp, and it's called the Falling Snow Stencil. And I placed it onto that layer, onto that piece of cardstock that I'm working on. And I made sure that the stencil is well taped so it's not moving on me when I'm going to do the next step. And then I took a sponge dauber, a new sponge dauber, and I took the Versamark refill ink, and I just added this Versamark right onto the sponge dauber. I made sure that I had enough ink on the dauber so that I could daub that clear embossing ink through the stencil for what I wanted to next. And once I had done that, I took this Puff White embossing powder. This is from Hero Arts, and I just went ahead and poured that embossing powder over the surface and heat set it. And look at that, look at all the texture, the beautiful glitter and the snow falling. It looks so magical, actually. I don't know if you're able to see that, but then I took a black cardstock. This is what I was talking about. The additional sentiment was Merry Merry, that I stamped on a black cardstock using white embossing powder, and I heat set it. And then after I heat set it, I cut it into a small strip, like a label, and then I adhered that on top of the Christmas, just kind of somewhere in the center of the word of Christmas, with some foam adhesive, and that completed the sentiment part of it. So the sentiment read Merry Merry Christmas. And after I was done with all that, I decided to cut 1/8 of an inch from all the sides of the cardstock, and I took a side folding white note card and I popped this panel onto it. I used a lot of foam adhesive. The paper had not really warped a lot. I was really amazed how much the Tim Holtz watercolor paper could hold all that heat and everything. It really had not warped it, but I kind of like the dimension, and I also am always wary of snag or buckling or anything like that. So I added a lot of adhesive, lot of foam adhesive, and I also added some liquid glue. It always helps me to position my my panels the way I want it. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room to move around. And then when I was done laying it onto the white base, I decided to add some sequins. I love the Pretty Pink Posh white sequins. I know there was a lot of texture on this card already, but adding that little bit of sequin just added to the entire scene of the card and the beauty of the wintry scene, and that completed the card. I hope you liked this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.